Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kay. I've been out for a little while. I took about a week off from filming, but I'm back now. And today I'm going to be bringing you another author spotlight. This month I'm going to be talking about Brom. He's an author. He writes kind of like dark fantasy type books, and then he's also an artist. So I believe he did a lot of the illustrations for like cards, like Dungeons and Dragons or something like that. But he also illustrates his novels, so he does paintings. And then you can go on his website and find prints to buy. I own one from one of the books that I have read of his. They're really, really beautiful, and I feel like they're very reasonably priced. So anyway, I love his art. His books I'm also a big fan of. I have read 4 of the 5 that I am aware he has written. There's just one more that I haven't gotten my hands on yet, but I own all the ones that I have read, so I'm going to talk about them today. The first book I'm going to talk about is the first book that I ever found and read by Brom, and that is Krampus the Yule Lord. So this book takes place in West Virginia. Our main character is named Jesse. He's kind of a loser. He's got a daughter. He's not really around. He's not reliable. He's constantly disappointing her all the time. I believe she is fairly young. But he is out one night, not really sure what he's doing, can't remember. It's been a while since I read this book. But anyway, he's out, and he sees a sleigh with reindeer and Santa or whatever, and it kind of takes off, and they're screaming and things are happening, but the sack, like Santa's bag, falls out of the sleigh, and it's magical, and when you reach inside, and you think of like a toy or whatever it is that you want, you can pull that out of the bag. So he's like, hey, I'm gonna do this and get my daughter presents for Christmas, blah, blah, blah. Well, then comes Krampus, and Krampus is an actual figure from history. In case you don't know, he is associated with Christmas. It's a Germanic type of thing. I believe he used to be the counterpart to a Santa figure. He was the punishment for the kids who were bad. He would take them and he'd beat them with these twig things and put them in his sack and take them back to hell and all kinds of things. So he was what happened if children were bad. In this book, though, they have kind of merged the Krampus myth with like Norse mythology. So Santa is actually Baldur, who is some sort of Norse god, and basically, Krampus is angry because Baldur took over Christmas, took over Yule, and imprisoned Krampus and his Belsnickles, which are his, they're like his little minions, his little servant people. But he's now escaped, and he is out for revenge. He wants to find Santa and kill Santa. I found this book in a Barnes & Noble once I came across it, and kind of randomly flipped through the pages a bit, and the first line that I kind of saw was something to the effect of Krampus cut off Santa's head, and I was like, well, then I have to read this book. It was several years before I did finally get to read it. I really enjoyed it. Krampus has now become actually part of our Christmas celebration with me and my daughter. We leave a little shoe out front with a little something in it for Krampus, and in return he leaves a little sack of chocolate coins for my daughter in her shoe. So that all came from kind of this thing. It's something fun that we like to do. But yes, this was a fun book. It's good to read around Christmas time. I would highly recommend. It is a little dark. Lots of violence and blood and fun stuff in between. So I would definitely recommend picking up Krampus. The next book that I'm going to talk about of his is Plucker. And Plucker is all about Jack. Jack is a toy. He is the Jack in a Jack-in-the-Box. And in this book, you have a little boy whose name I don't remember, and it's not really that important because he's not the main character. And when he gets tired of his toys, the toys end up kind of getting shoved under the bed, like toys do when you outgrow them. It's a little bit like Toy Story, actually. So the toys are alive, and as, you know, the little boy grows up or loses interest in the toys, they kind of disappear under the bed and are forgotten about, and they kind of lose their magic and die, I guess, sort of. And in this story, the boy's father, I believe, just came back from a trip to Africa or something of that nature, and had brought back, I think, like masks or something. And in these, you know, things that he brought back, there was a demon of some sort trapped. And he brings it back to the house, and now the demon's in the house. And it's feeding on the little boy through his toys. So it's stealing the toys and destroying them. And by doing so, it's like taking the little boy's spirit, because the little boy is attached to his toys. Jack has recently found his way under the bed, and he's kind of distraught about it. But then he finds out about this demon, and so he wants to save the little boy, despite the fact that, you know, he's been pushed aside and forgotten. He is going to save the little boy. So that's what he's out to do. He's trying to enlist the help of some of the other toys. But anyway, and this is a really good one to look at as far as the art goes, because this one is fully illustrated. I forgot to flip through Krampus. It does have some illustrations, but this one's fully illustrated. So like every page has illustrations. I don't know if I can, here we go. So some of them are, let's see if I can find a good one. Like here's some of the like totem things from the underbed. And there's a good one of, like here's a fight scene. So he does these kind of big illustrations. And I think I have myself a print of one of the characters from this book. I'm not sure, maybe not. But anyway, you get the idea. He has pretty much illustrated this whole book. There's a lot of creepy illustrations in this one. This is not one that I would probably read to my daughter, because she'd probably have nightmares. And like all of the Brom's books that I have read, there is definitely a lot of darkness in the story. So, not necessarily for children, but I really enjoyed this book. Like I said, it's kind of a dark Toy Story type of story. The next book that I'm going to talk about is The Child Thief. And this is a Peter Pan retelling. So Brom does seem to pull a lot from folk tales and stories and things that are present in our kind of culture. Whether it's Peter Pan or kind of the toy, like toys being alive thing or whatever. He does kind of pull from familiar themes and familiar stories and does this. This is a dark retelling of Peter Pan. In this one, it's connected with like fairy, like the fae. So Peter lures boys to Neverland, which is basically where all the fairies live. It used to be a much bigger place and things like that, but obviously with mankind kind of taking over everything and industrializing and all that, it's kind of shrunk down. So Peter kind of, he is able to travel to our world. He lures away children to fight basically in a war between the fae. He and his lost boys fight against the pirates that we all know and love. So Captain Hook and Smee and all them. But in this case, they're kind of these hideous, rotting zombie kind of people. They're not like, you know, dead or mindless or anything like that, but they are kind of these decomposing, gross things. And so he has to get these children to kind of keep rebuilding his numbers, because obviously they keep clashing with the adults and dying. And he has to get the boys, or the children, I should say, when they're young enough, because if they're too close to being grown up, then they kind of get sick and die or something of that nature. It doesn't go well for them. So he has to get young children. But the boy that he gets when this story starts is kind of right on that edge. And he lures him with him, kind of convinces him to go with him through this misty passageway to Neverland. And kind of join the ranks of the Lost Boys and fight against Captain Hook and their people, who are like Puritans. It's very odd. But this is one of my favorite Brom stories. Just in terms of like the atmosphere of it. It's very dark and kind of creepy. And Peter Pan is always, I enjoy Peter Pan retellings. So this for me was kind of one that I was really excited to get to when I found out about it. But yeah, so it's anybody who likes Peter Pan, who likes dark retellings of like fairy tales and popular stories, should pick this up. It does have illustrations. It doesn't have as many as Plucker, but there are some really nice illustrations. So like this is Peter. You have a witch, Siku, which is one of the children that helped him fight. She's been there for a really long time. You have some fae type creatures that live in the forest. So there are other fae that don't fight. The fairies, they kind of have their own area, and there's this sort of almost truce. As long as Peter and his kids don't cross the border, it's an uneasy truce. So there is one. So here's the captain, who is Captain Hook. So I don't know how well you can see, but like his skin tone is very like gray and blue, and he's kind of rough looking. And then you have the Reverend, and the Reverend is where you can really see the decay. Like I said, you probably can't see this super well, but his face is kind of like rotting and emaciated and gross looking. So this is a really fun book. I'd recommend it. I'd recommend all these books, obviously, but this one I think was my favorite, especially some of the artwork in it. And then the last book that I have to talk about, and the one that I most recently read, is Lost Gods. This has to do with going to the underworld, so that's why I like it so much. You have lost and forgotten gods from, you know, all the worlds before play a part in here. So you have like old, like earth type of gods from different parts of the world. And this story focuses on a man whose name I can't remember, Chet, and his pregnant wife, Trish. And Chet just got out of jail. Trish's dad hates him, but he convinces Trish to run off with him. They get married, and he goes to the only place he can think to go, and that is to his grandmother's house, somewhere in the south. I want to say one of the Carolinas, but I could be wrong. Because I think that's where he kind of grew up a little bit, like when he was very young, before he was taken away by some of his other family members. He was there, so he goes back, and things are not as he thought they were. He ends up having to go to the underworld. I can't remember why exactly. Anyway, he ends up in the underworld. Things down there are also quite unpleasant. There's a bit of a war going on. The best part for me was the world building as far as the underworld goes. You have all these different kind of areas to it, and you have different powers, political powers, different factions, and lots of chaos, and things are decaying and not working like they're supposed to because you have people who are greedy and power hungry and are kind of taking advantage of people and things like that. And he has to wander through the underworld. I can't remember what he has to get. There is an end goal, and he keeps that end goal in mind, which I was pretty happy about because there's a lot going on. But the whole time, he doesn't get super involved in everybody else's problems. He still has his goal in mind because he's trying to get back to our world to save his wife and his unborn child is basically what he's trying to do. But he's trapped in the underworld, so he's got to get out. And so it's just this whole journey through to get back to the top. I didn't like this quite as much as Child Thief, but I was surprised by the ending. I was surprised how it went, because honestly, I never really know with Brom on how the ending is going to go, if it's going to be kind of, you know, hopeful, or if it's just going to be like, ooh, a little bleak there. I was satisfied with how it ended, definitely, but I think for me it was definitely the journey through the underworld was the best part, just because you do get to see all these different gods that theoretically or likely were worshipped in some way. There's a god that has a deer head, so it's like a deer god, so some sort of like, I'm assuming some sort of like forest god. You have the Red Lady, who's kind of a Sphinx type god. Yeah, you have, and this one does have some really nice illustrations. But there's just all different types of gods and creatures and weird characters. And spooky characters. So these are a couple of boys that feature fairly early on in the book. They were actual little boys who died, and they're now these sort of demons that are haunting Chet's grandmother's property. So that's all the books that I have of his. He did write another one called Devil's Rose, which is sort of a Western inspired story. I'm not entirely sure what it's about. I really don't have any idea. I know the cover has got like a skeleton type cowboy on a motorcycle, I believe. So like I said, I don't know what it's about. I haven't read it yet. I don't even know where I would get it because I doubt any library around here has it. So I'm not even sure how I would get my hands on it to read it without having to buy it, which I don't like to do. But I might, just because it's Brom and I've liked all his other books. So anyway, that is all I have for today. I highly suggest you go and pick up one of these books if they sound at all interesting. I always try to recommend them to people. I have not seen really any other reviews or anything about any of his books, but I think they are very good. The artwork in them is absolutely excellent and beautiful and amazing, and I love it. And that's all I've got for today. So thanks for sticking around. Like and subscribe down below if you want. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!